But if you don't have that rooted philosophy about focusing on the people, I would struggle if I didn't have that. I think I'll be rooted in kind of probably three things. I think focusing on your people, and that means coaching, that means growth, that means supporting them, advocating for them. I think the second one is just doing what's right and really promoting what should be done in the right way, what's right for the prospect, what's right for the customer, what's right for the company, what's right for your teammates. And the third is having some fun. So focus on your people, do what's right, have some fun. And I think the rest you can build processes around, you can build forecasting methodologies, you can do a lot of that stuff, some of the more kind of the more tactical and operational things. But if you don't have that rooted philosophy about focusing on the people, then I think you're probably gonna, I would struggle if I didn't have that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And being a teacher, it must require a lot of patience. So a lot of similarities, would you say?
Yes, certainly. I will say that moving into sales, I think I've become a lot less patient. Moving into sales management, I've had to kind of had to recalibrate those muscles, right? Redevelop those muscles to be more patient. I have a tough time doing that, and working for a venture-backed software company with high expectations, high growth, a lot of impatience, right? So it is a muscle that has to be redeveloped from those days, and it's difficult to do, but it's definitely required for sure.
Okay. What do you think? What do you think it takes to be a patient? What process? Is it just your philosophies or a specific thing that you do?
It's a great question. I don't know if I have a great answer. I think first of all, a lot of deep breaths are required. But really, again, if you come back to focus on the people and focus on where an individual is in that moment, that is requiring some patience. I think that is, starting with empathy, I think is the core driver that will get you to becoming a more patient person. It does take a lot of practice to remember to do that, right? There are much more empathetic people naturally than others. I'm on the other side of that. So having the reminder when you want to speak, remind yourself to listen, right? Remind yourself to sit in their shoes. And that could go for a prospect, that could go for your boss, that could go for working cross-functionally, right? But really understanding where they're coming from is key to taking the next step in whatever dialogue is occurring in that moment.
Okay, perfect. So moving me back to the fact that you're working in such a high growth environment and you need to train and coach your reps. What are your philosophies there? What do you think defines a really good A player as opposed to a B player?
It's such an interesting question because I think you can have all of the skills that are necessary to perform well and hit your quota and do all of those things, but I don't necessarily think that makes you an A player. I think there's some probably some qualities and some characteristics. Thinking about being a great teammate, right? Looking out for the people around them. And A players tend to look out for their teammates, tend to look out for the people that are around them, tend to look out for the people that support them. They're really helpful and have a good vision of what the bigger picture is. They're part of something bigger. They feel that they want to contribute to it. And because of that, they often appear very humble, right? They're quick to pass their successes to people that support them, right? Conversely, there are people who can smash their quota and not do that and take all the credit and probably stay on my list as a B player, right? Maybe a B plus player, right? But I think that those things coupled with almost, I guess, what I would classify as kind of an insatiable desire to learn and to grow and to get better and to hone their craft and be the best that they can be in their respective class. And that all comes from kind of an underlying, some characteristics of curiosity and impatience. And we talked about patience just a second ago. I will tell you that We hire for impatience. We look for impatience. Impatient and curious people tend to be at least B players, if not A players, right? But if you look across most A players that I know, they ask a lot of questions, right?
Mm,
And they come to you about the same thing over and over and over until it's answered. Very impatient, almost to the point of annoyance sometimes,
mm,
right? But that's what makes them really good at their jobs, right? So
mm,
I know I threw a lot of things that are mostly characteristics,
mm.
but again, I think without those characteristics, uh, I would argue that you can't be an A player without having the majority of those things.
That's really cool. So impatience, is that because there's something that that rep or that person needs to get done and they're
Yeah,
going to figure out how they're going to
right,
get their team involved?
right. They want legal to move faster. They want security to move faster. They want the prospect to move faster. They want themselves sometimes to move faster, and they have to remind themselves to slow down,
Mm,
be patient, and not push in certain situations, right? But if they, it's funny. I joke a lot about the phone call that I'll get from an account executive
mhm.
that will that will literally say sometimes, "Hey, did you get my text about the Slack that I sent you, referencing the email that I just forwarded?" And all of this happens within like 90 seconds. So that level of impatience is working it frustrating, but at the same time, it's why they are oftentimes as successful as they are. They are driven toward results. They are driven to helping people, which is a big again, one of the characteristics that we look for in our account executives.
Mm, okay. Well, here's a question for you, Justin. How do you track that in, the initial interview to
Yeah,
a year or 2 years in?
yeah, that's a great question. I think I think rather than kind of teeing it up with questions, I think we really focus on how a candidate runs their process, right?
Mhm,
Um, Candidates that run their process as if they are in a deal cycle and we are the prospect tend to follow up faster. They tend to ask for a shorter timeline.
mhm,
Uh, they tend to try to push us a little bit. And those are the things, even though they might seem like they are almost, no-nos, I suppose, when you're going through the interview process.
mhm,
Those are the things that we actually kind of look for, right?
mm,
We want account executives to run their process in that in that interview process, right?
mhm,
Treat us like a prospect. So I think it's about less of us trying to uncover it and more about really observing what happens and how they handle the process from first touch to last touch.
mm. That's really cool because I feel like you can see people who you can tell they're in sales and everything they do is quite sales related, even though they're not selling at this current
Right?
moment.
Yeah.
So that makes
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
sense.
it stands out. We had our newest account executive. Her name was Ashley Coghill. She prospected me probably 12 weeks ago,
Mhm,
and showed up with a video. Said, "Hey, I want to talk about being a lesson liaison." Right?
mhm,
I was not the hiring manager. She may have done that to a hiring manager too, but she came to multiple people. She went
mhm,
multi-threaded from a prospecting perspective. She got us on the hook early. I don't know if
mhm.
she ever even submitted a resume through our system,
Yeah.
right? It totally broke the process. And like right away, that says, hey, this is really interesting. This is a person who is running their process, and she's good at her job. And I'm really glad she prospected us. And that's an example of kind of how we look for people that are running their process.
Mm, okay. That is so cool. Shout out to Ashley because that's
Yeah.
very smart.
Shout out to Ashley.
Right. So you've got all these really amazing people on board. What
Yeah.
do you do when a rep's not performing? Let's go back there because I really want to know.
Yeah. Um, this is a great question, and I wish there were like one specific path to that, right?
Mhm,
Uh, I think there are a lot of reasons for people not performing, right? Just like back to second grade, right? Child's not performing in second grade, struggling in spelling. Why is that, right?
mhm,
It could be attention. It could be something's going on at home. It could be they can't see the piece of paper. They can't see the chalkboard. They need glasses. Like, there are a lot of different things to think about.
Mhm.
And I think the same concepts apply to adults in their work, right? But really understanding kind of where they're coming from, if they are seeing the same things as a manager is seeing, and digging in with them, right? It has to be collaborative, right?
Mhm.
We talk about data that we're seeing, we have to understand it. I mean, Josephine, there are times when I have gone to a rep and said, hey, your activity level is too low.
Mm.
You need to bring this up. And they'll say, well, that's strange because here's what I'm seeing, right?
Mhm.
And it turns out I might be looking in Salesforce, they're looking in Salesloft. Those systems aren't talking. I'm getting bad data, but I
Mm.
approached it in a way that was probably a little bit more combative, right? Than
Mhm.
really seeking to understand. So to start seeking to understand why it's happening, help somebody uncover the root of why the performance is where it is, and
Mhm.
then start building a plan, right? Building a plan, getting agreement on what that plan is going to be,
Mhm.
who's going to execute it, when it's going to be executed, and really start focusing in on probably one or two specific areas, because you can't make it too convoluted, right?
Mhm.
But one or two specific areas, and really start building on that to build the performance. If the performance doesn't build there, I think that's when you start to go a different route of is this the right seat?
Mm. Okay. And it's quite interesting to hear. So, say if you look on Salesforce and they're just not hitting their numbers, to what extent are you still using data when you're improving their performance and you're evaluating if they're actually making these improvements?
Yeah, probably in most cases. I've done coaching plans on communication, right?
Mhm.
So a little bit more on soft skills, right? Tough to get into Salesforce and really look at soft skills. You might use something like Gong for that, right?
Mm.
Set up some triggers and things like that. So it's probably still a little bit less data driven, but um, uh, you can start doing communication plans together. Like,
Mm.
there are a lot of those soft skills that I think might not show up in Salesforce that you can be working on.
Mhm.
And then eventually those soft skills, as they improve, should be able, I hope, will be able to tie back to specific results that we're looking for that will show up in Salesforce. So almost
Mhm.
thinking of it kind of like the foundational layer of becoming good.
Mhm.
Um, and then once we get to that point where we've achieved our agreement, our agreed
Mhm.
upon outcome of the coaching plan, now we can start thinking about how that is going to impact the results.
Mm. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So, say if you do a lot of coaching and like what you've just described, how do you know whether something's a like team weakness or an individual weakness? Like, how do you distinguish between that? Is it having really great conversations? What is it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we're really lucky here at Leslie because of what we do, right?
Mhm.
Software. We also have a product that helps evaluate this type of thing, and the product was built off of processes we built out over the past several, I shouldn't say several, probably 3 years, defining a skills matrix. Like, what are the skills that it takes to be successful in the job
Mhm.
here? Making sure that those are defined and communicated, but also that we're taking those specific skills and building individualized coaching plans for
Mm.
each rep, because they are unique again, right? So one rep might be working on negotiation while another rep is working on building a solutions based solution, sorry, need based solution, sorry. um, and they're going to be doing that at the same time. But when
Mhm.
you aggregate all of that, right, and you do that through, well, at least we do that through self-assessment, quarterly self-assessment on those skills, a manager assessment, and then we tie some data. So we've got two subjective data points, and then
Mhm.
the objective data point with some data around it from Salesforce. And then we start to get a picture of each person and how they stack up, and then we bring them all together, and we actually have a tool that shows how the team is doing, right? So
Ah.
we're very lucky in that regard to be able to look at a dashboard that says, here's where the team is really good in those three data points. Here's where the team is struggling.
Mhm.
Uh, and so we know right then, do we need to have a team-wide enablement, right? Or do we need to think about individualized coaching plans on specific things for specific people, right? So, and we might be able to do both depending on the situation. So again, probably a little unique, probably a little lucky or very lucky because of what we do. But that's really kind of how we drive understanding the individual versus the team.
Okay. Do you feel like this process differs from, the different companies that you've been in?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
Um, uh, and I know it differs from other companies that are out there because we have this conversation every day, right?
mhm,
Um, there are some companies that are much more mature in their, I'll call it their coaching plan journey, right? And some that haven't started, right? And
mm,
they haven't started because of time,
mhm,
right? It takes a lot of time to go coach, right? Focus, right? It's tough to really focus on one or two things at a time,
mm,
um, or knowledge, right? They just don't know where to start or how to start, right? So I think we kind of take care of the knowledge piece
mm,
because of what we do, um, but we've got to help people also understand that they are in control of their time and of their focus.
mhm,
And if they make that a priority and the coaching plans come alive,
mhm,
that investment in those people, the long tail of that is crushing quotas and seeing a lot of great growth in their careers.
mm. Okay. So it sounds like a rep hitting target.
Mhm.
It's not it's not the best metric to go by when you think of a really good salesperson.
I think it's a great metric to look at.
Mhm,
I don't think it's the only metric to look at.
mm,
You can have somebody who is hitting target on a regular basis, but is harmful to the rest of the team for
mhm,
whatever morale purposes, whatever, right? You can argue all day long whether you want that person on your team. Some people want that person, some people don't,
mhm,
right? But ultimately, that's where you want to get somebody, right? And even if they are there, it's now our job to keep them there, and it's our job to help them get to that next level, whatever level their next play in their career, right? It's
mhm,
our job to help them get to that point. We very much at Lessonly think about Lessonly being in sales at Lessonly as being a critical moment in a rep's career or a person's career,
mm,
right? And we want to be able to support them in their career, not just in this quarter or next quarter,
mhm,
but throughout. And the development of that and the investment in them is what's going to drive that.
mm. That's really nice. Okay, so just a final question for you.
Mm,
So if you was in a room full of revenue leaders, what's that
okay.
one question that you'd want an answer to?
I'm going to fall back to one of our values at Lessonly, and which is highlight what's working,
Mhm,
right? I know I have a tendency to look for the things that are broken and try to go fix them, right? This value has pulled me out of that a lot so that
mhm,
I can go replicate the things that are working. So I think the question that I would ask I'd love to know the top three things that are, even the one thing that's working today for you in your revenue team. Um, I would like to replicate those things, right? Or try to make our own versions of those things, right?
mhm,
I think initially my gut is to say, hey, what are the mistakes? So I don't go make those mistakes, but I kind of want to go make mistakes, right? We're going to learn from them. It means we're testing things. That's a good thing. But I also want all the things that have worked for other people to see if we can replicate them. And now I've got this, almost bank of things that will work for other people that I can see if they work for us or not. And if they don't, great. But at least we gave it a shot.
mm. Great one. I like that. And do you have any concluding thoughts or words of advice that you'd give a revenue leader who are looking to coach, upskill their reps?
Yeah, I mean, um, I can only speak to what we've done at Lessonly and the
Mhm,
impact that I've seen at Lessonly. I think it's create the time, make the focus, and it'll pay off. Right? We own that. And there's all sorts of stats out there about how much time sales reps actually get coached during the week,
mhm,
uh, and it's pretty low, right? And if you're a frontline manager,
mhm,
I don't know what else you are really focusing on outside of coaching,
Mm.
right? And that coaching can take many different forms,
Mhm.
right? And I'm sure you got to roll up forecasts and you got to do all of that, but
Yeah.
really strongly about the long tail here,
Mhm.
and what your team is doing 6 quarters from now, 7, 8 quarters from now, because you are spending time today coaching, and creating those coaching plans for people that are individualized based on their unique needs.
Mhm.
I think it's an investment worth making. I think it's worth carving out the time and creating the focus and understanding how to do it.
Mm. Building the foundations.
Yeah, totally. I love how you said that. I'm gonna pull that out and I'm gonna use
You can have it. Have
it.
it.